Good afternoon, welcome. My name is Eric Hackenberg. I'm one of the founders of Tenor, the world's largest emotional search engine. And what I want to talk to you about today is how visual expression has already changed the way that we're communicating in fundamental ways, and how that's tied to emotions and how we feel about things, and how that created an opportunity for Tenor to create an emotional search engine, a search engine that marketers and brands are now able to tap into to better communicate their messages. As I mentioned, GIFs have already changed the way that we're communicating. As you know, this year we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of GIFs, but you've seen a resurgence recently in the way that we're communicating. You're seeing GIFs appear in messaging everywhere. That started 3 years ago when we launched the product GIF Keyboard and introduced GIFs into messaging for the first time. Let's go through the evolution of visual expression. It started with a simple LOL and a simple smiley, then to emoji, an animated emoji. Interesting things like Bitmoji have also cropped up. But the GIF is the first time that you have full sight and motion to be able to express yourself in a richer and deeper fashion. From a visual expression perspective, the real secret behind it is that I will say to people, who would have imagined that the way we'd be communicating right now would be through dry text messaging, that the primary way that we communicate would be through text. And with that, we lost our ability to convey emotion, to communicate more richly. And the reason people are returning to this is, returning to GIFs and using GIFs for visual expression, is it gives you back that same kind of connection you have when you're having a face-to-face conversation. And you see that it's already widely adopted. 71% of Americans report that they already use visual expression in their messaging today. It's also very much connected to emotions and the way that people are communicating those emotions. In the billions and billions of searches that we get every month, we're seeing that 90% of those searches are centered on emotion, that it really is a whole new way to communicate the way you feel about things. Some more data about why people use GIFs to communicate. 59% say that they feel more comfortable expressing themselves through visual expression, through GIFs, than they do in a telephone conversation. It's funny, it's easier to show your feelings than it is to say them to somebody. 69% feel more connected to the people they're talking with when they use visual expression to communicate. And finally, 77% say that they're better understood, that their feelings and emotions are better understood when they use visual expression as the way that they communicate. There's also a deep connection between how we express ourselves and emotions. In fact, there's a recent study by Cal Berkeley that came out last month that shows that there are now 27 distinct emotional states. Previously, it had been reported that only 6 existed. As you look at the way we communicate, it turns out it's far more complex. In fact, when you look at the nuance that each one of those 27 emotions has, you see the opportunity for an emotional search engine. We have to understand all of the different ways that people want to convey the complexity of each of our emotions. The other thing that's unique is that this is a different kind of search. No one says, when I'm hungry on Google. That's not how you would communicate that. It doesn't seem the place of the time. But when you go to Tenor for the GIF Keyboard, you actually see people typing in, I'm hungry, and searching for this. And we're able to use the data that we get from the GIF Keyboard, our own app, and also from all of the partners that we work with, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, iMessage, Google Gboard, Kik, Twitter, and many, many others, to pull together all of the data that people are searching for and typing in emotions into our search engine. This results in what we call the emotional graph. It has 4 billion unique terms in it, and we understand all of the connections between those emotions, how people search for them, how they express themselves, and finally, we understand what GIFs best express each of those emotions. We recently introduced a product called Tenor Insights. It actually gives brands and marketers the opportunity to understand the emotional graph in deeper ways. You can type in any term you want to see how it's trending over time. And now we can dive into some of the interesting insights that we've pulled together. So this, as I mentioned before, is the search for I'm hungry. This is basically hungry. And you'll see that it actually peaks at 9 a.m. in the morning. I had expected this to happen. I had expected for it to peak sometime during lunch or dinner, but in fact, it turns out breakfast may be the most important meal of the day. Think of the opportunity that presents to marketers. When we look at searches for lunch, they increase in popularity throughout the week, peaking on Thursday. You can imagine a QSR marketer and how appealing it would be to be able to search just before lunch on Thursday and put a GIF in there as a way to invite somebody to lunch. Changing pages a bit, we took a dive into romance, and you'll see that at the beginning of the week, it's actually pretty innocent. People are searching for kiss and hug. They spike on Mondays and Tuesdays. As it gets further along the week, things are starting to heat up. You start to see that flirty and cuddle peak on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Finally, it goes over the top by the time you reach the weekend. On Saturday night, come over is spiking more than any other term. What we didn't put in this presentation, by the way, is if you look at when come over spikes, 1 hour later, the GIF for no also spikes. This is an example that this is an international phenomenon. So it's a simple search. Good morning. It's very obviously a greeting around the world. And as you see the sunshine rise in the morning, you see that people are, in fact, waking up and greeting everybody around the world. And when you do this, you can see that we have it customized and localized for all of the different markets. You can see good morning, bonjour, guten morgen. What you don't see in this, these are real screenshots from our product. What you don't see in this is the fact that there should be a brand marketing message there. We're working with Dunkin Donuts already, and they are actually now buying GIFs like this that will appear just in front of, or in response to a search for good morning. You can imagine a hot cup of coffee or a breakfast sandwich being served up right before you as an invitation to somebody to join you for a cup of coffee. Taking it a different pathway, you can see that we actually have an emotional sense of the country. This is just a search for crying, looking at the month of September. And you can see it's relatively flat. Nothing particularly spikes or exciting is happening. But if you go back and look at it from a year back, you'll see that there are some notable spikes. The presidential debates, US presidential elections, and then President Trump's inauguration, of course. Lots of crying happening in those events. But it's not all bad news. If you actually look at the times when we're spending time with our friends and family, you'll see that on Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, that the crying actually lowers in terms of searching. There's less crying going on those holidays when we're spending time with family. But it's not all red or blue states, right? Everybody uses GIFs. If you look at Make America Great Again, searches for that, you'll see that it spiked on July 4th, which is great to see. But you also see, unfortunately, that it spiked on the Charlottesville rallies. I invite you to go to our blog at tenor.com. In addition to Tenor Insights, we have a collection of blogs that we put out on a regular basis that talk about the different trends we see, including, of course, all of the popular Trump GIFs that you've seen over the past year. But the emotional search engine also taps into the culture of the country. You can look here at the entertainment, an example of entertainment. Last month, if you saw the film or you saw the trailer, you realize that there's a new scary clown in town. And in fact, as you would suspect, it spiked right before it was released. That is the searches for it on the day that the film launched. But what's more interesting, again, is the emotional reaction to that. And on this next slide, you'll see that searches for scared also spiked exactly on the day that it was released. And finally, even a little bit deeper in, if you look at the word panic, the #1 day in the last 90 days was also the day that it launched. So you can see the emotional sense of the country coming through in the data that we're collecting. Sports, another way that the culture connects to emotions. If you take a look at what we're seeing from a sports perspective, what's interesting here is that we're not seeing consumers looking for highlights of the game or their particular favorite player. What they're looking for is the emotions that they feel throughout the course of the sporting event. So on the launch of Monday Night Football, High Five had its highest day and spiked in the last 90 days. But it goes deeper than that. Of course, when you're watching sports, depending what side you're on, how your team is doing, you might find yourself being happy, being excited, being disappointed, being sad, being even bored. And what's nice about this is you can see that the brand marketers have the ability to reach the consumer across all these different sentiments that exist when the people are searching for emotions on Tenor. So what do we offer to brands and marketers? We have the ability, most importantly, to align with emotion. For the first time, you can actually understand a person's sentiment at that very moment and align your marketing message to map directly to that term. The next thing that's important, of course, as attention spans have decreased, we have two things that we can deliver to brands and marketers. First of all, we actually are integrated into the mobile messaging environment. The mobile phone is the most important device in our lives, and messaging is the most important app on those devices, and there really isn't an effective way to reach consumers in that environment. We can deliver audiences there in a native way. But the second thing is, with short attention spans, you must do it quickly. And the GIF is the perfect way to do that, right? Within 2 to 3 seconds, you can convey exactly the brand sentiment, the emotion that you're trying to connect to the consumer and to the moment in time. So from a brand and marketing perspective, we give brands the power to use visual communication, visual expression to better send their marketing message. From our perspective, the goal is to deliver the mobile messaging environment, targeting emotions, being able to do that in a native way, and making sure that you get a guaranteed view that's been endorsed both by the sender and, of course, is viewed also by the recipient or recipients of that GIF. Our goal is to make sure that you have that ability across every single mobile phone that exists out there, and we're well on our way to doing that. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions, guys? Okay.
All right.
Cool. All right. So that concludes our session. And then thank you so much. A round of applause for a new speaker.
Thank you.